Hey, fleshies. Today we're going to talk about a small little topic. Comic books. Let me start with a question. When's the last time you bought a comic book? When's the last time you bought a single issue comic book? The floppy looking ones. They're called floppies. As a comic book nerd, I find this stuff fascinating because as time has gone on, it's become harder and harder to find single issues out in the real world. If you want to read single issues, you gotta go to your local comic book shop. Strange, right? You'd think that with the advent of all the big superhero movies and superhero culture, we'd have more comics everywhere. However, single issues are a bad deal. And a lot about the comic book industry is wrapped up in so many things it's like a little lesson on economics. So let's break it down. Newsstands and bookstores have a distribution model called sale or return, which means if you don't sell it, you can return what stock you have. This means that these businesses don't have to tank the cost of their Men's Health or Cosmopolitan magazines that don't sell. This also means that someone else has to tank this cost, like the distributor or the publisher. Comic books use a different model, or at least they do for their main homes, the local comic book store. This model is called the direct market, meaning the retailers order comics from the distributor and they cannot return these books. So if they order 100 issues of Batman #1, for example, and they can only sell 50, these stores are stuck with the other 50. And for most comic book shops, being stuck with a lot of stock that you didn't sell spells the end. Now the people in charge of this are called Diamond. They are the largest comic book distributors by far. They began in the early 80s and since then they have bought up more and more until they monopolize the comic book distribution industry. If you look at the history of Diamond, it feels like a Civilization game that no one ever stopped. They just won and kept going and going. They even beat Marvel, who tried to do their own distribution for a little bit. And you may ask, Fleshmonk, aren't monopolies illegal? And evidently the US government asked this question too and launched their own 3-year investigation. At the end of it, spoiler warning, they said that Diamond was a comic book monopoly. But since they were only a monopoly for comic book distribution and not all of book distribution, no action was deemed necessary. But with monopolies and a lack of competition comes bad stuff. Common complaints are damaged books, late orders, but hey, what are you gonna do? There are no other big distributors. I don't even know who could compete or who would even want to. Because the thing is, comic books suck. I mean, let's look at the data, right? The Diamond data sucks. The comic book industry doesn't have good statistics for single issue sales, and all Diamond sales figures are what stores buy, not what people have actually bought. It also doesn't include international book market and digital sales either. Some people say that these sales numbers are ultimately misleading and pushing stores to buy certain books off of wrong statistics. The dirty secret is that the publishers succeed when they sell us product we don't sell. Nobody wants to know sell-through numbers in this business. But publisher use of multiple covers, weekly series, rebooting and renumbering series, and hype instead of actual content info creates an environment where we can't use our historical sales data accurately. And even with all of this, comics don't make money. The profit margins aren't good enough and they're just not worth it. Comic publishing is not a profitable venture. You can make a few bucks publishing comics, but your return on investment will be demoralizing. No company survives on publishing alone. Issues keep getting more expensive and yet the profit margins are still not worth it. Normal people aren't seeing these comics because they're in specialty shops, not regular places. Your local supermarket or 7-Eleven just doesn't make enough off of comic sales to keep them. There are normal comics that are almost $5. Why pay $5 for a comic that's usually 1/6 of a story and has ads when you can get a $15 collection of 6 issues? All you have to do is be okay with waiting like 6 months. And with all these factors, you might be asking, why are comics like this? Why does the direct market exist?
Well, there's trouble in comic book world. Marvel Comics might not soon be there. The company is filing Chapter 13, and that's not good for fans.
And that's because the direct market saved the comic book industry at its lowest point. Newsstand sales weren't doing so hot, and boom, the direct market came in and gave the industry a booster shot to help them. Instead of waiting weeks for new comics, your local comic store now had comics shipped directly. And if you missed an issue, your local comic store would have them as back issues. It essentially converted a smaller, more general following to a hyper-focused group of hobby shops that had a fan base. However, a lot of the principles that kept the direct market going have kind of aged poorly. The sheer volume of the books that shipped helped everyone stay afloat, but those numbers died down after the 90s. And the back issues that still sold, most people don't even look at them after 6 months. After the rise of digital comics and trade paperbacks, it's unnecessary for everyone except collectors. And with that, we reach the big elephant in the room. Or big elephants. Elephant number 1. Comic sales are rising overall, but it's because of a heavy helping by graphic novel sales. Individual issue sales have recently plateaued, and all the growth in the industry isn't because of them. Your Batman number 70s and Amazing Spider-Man number 15s don't mean anything when compared to something like Dave Pilkey books, which pull. According to Bookscan numbers, Scholastic dominates the graphic novel industry. DC and Marvel have a measly amount of market share compared to them, and that's the crazy thing. The growth in the industry is built off of young readers / all ages graphic novels and not single issue comic books. And if you think about it a little deeper, it makes sense, right? Even if Avengers Endgame makes $1.2 billion in a weekend, do people go and pick up Avengers comic books? Not really, because it's not like it's the same medium, and it's not like the movie is a direct adaptation of the comics. People excited about the movies reading the Avengers comic afterwards will read about an entirely different roster. Not to mention they won't initially understand the 50 years deep Marvel continuity, and again, single issues suck. $5 for ad-filled 20 pages? The only reason you take that cost is if you're A, keeping up with the storylines that you can't wait, or B, a collector. Elephant number 2. Kind of like the struggle between physical and digital games, digital comics are a thing. They are a slowly advancing giant and they will mess up the physical comics landscape. It happens to all mediums, music, film, games. The transition between physical to digital is an advantageous one for consumers and not so great for everyone else. I mean, look at Marvel Unlimited and DC Universe. Both are subscription services that come with thousands of back issues online. Conceivably, if you didn't really care about reading physically, you'd be set for life with just those subscriptions. The convenience and the quality are there. The only thing I'm personally not happy with is the pricing, but I doubt Marvel / DC are going to price their digital books way lower than their physical ones. Even though it might be better for business, this would kill the retailers. And we also don't know the true sales figures for digital. But I think it'd be short-sighted to think that digital comics aren't going to overtake physical ones just like in every other medium ever. A logical question would be, how do we progress then? Do we just go the way of streaming services and subscription services, but for comics? Do Marvel and DC extend the capacity of their respective digital offerings? When do we decide that we no longer care about local comic book shops? They've been suffering for a while. There are a lot of questions with a lot of possible answers and a lot of possible repercussions. Maybe Marvel and DC do the subscription streaming thing and then all the local comic book stores that you love just die. But everybody reads comics. Maybe they experiment with the Shonen Jump format more and then they just do comics the way they're done in Japan in a magazine format. I mean, some are trying to even binge drop comics like in Netflix. All of these things could be valid or not. Who knows? All I know is comics and the way they're distributed and consumed right now are outdated. Evolve or die, right? Hey, you might be thinking, whoa, this is like beyond a small topic, and you know what? Maybe it is, but hey, my Katamari video got like 40 views. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. I think we're at 330 something right now as we're recording, so thank you so much for the support and the love. Stay cool and stay fleshy.